So thank you everyone for popping in my session. I have my timer going so I can make sure we're in and out in our 30 minutes. But I want to talk to you about empathy interviews. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that you understand our vision, mission, and our theory of action when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. But the most important thing that we like to talk about is our vision, and that is that every student and educator in Kentucky feels a sense of belonging. We want you to feel connected in the spaces that you work in with the students, staff, the families. And we do this with our mission. We want to elevate student voices. And we do this simultaneously. So we're working on our mission, then we'll eventually get to our vision. That's our theory of action. That's what we hope to get to in the end. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. I want to give you a little research on why we need to do empathy interviews. We're in a national emergency. I know all the principals have felt it when they came back from the pandemic and people were like, the pandemic's over. It is still happening. If you know anything about Hurricane Katrina, it took them 5 years to fully go through the whole cycle. We are only going into 2.5, almost 3 years of this. And now we have monkeypox and all this other stuff. I feel like every day it's a new variant or something that's happening. And then we have the whole social media thing that's happening. We have a lot of racial injustice happening. With that being said, the American Academy of Pediatrics has stated that we're in a national emergency. Our students are under a lot of stress. And I like to say that our teachers, our educators are under the same stress because we feel it when our students come in. So principal or any type of administrator during the pandemic, we were home. I am happy to see your face. Bless your heart. I was a counselor and it was a whole lot of experience through the pandemic. I hope we never, and I say that again, never have to experience that again, but we survived. Now moving forward. Also, the national data from the Center for Disease Control has suspected that suicide attempts have gone up 31% among adolescents in 2020. We had, again, the pandemic. We were home in isolation. We saw a lot of racial injustice, 51% higher in 2021 compared to 2019 among girls ages 12 to 17. We know that girls are a lot more social than our young men are, but the fact that the numbers are increasing, we want to know why. And I am a qualitative person. I did my dissertation qualitative, and that is really doing interviews and knowing the voices behind the numbers. The numbers are important, but sometimes we have to dig a little deeper to figure out what's really behind the numbers. If you're not familiar with the KIPP survey, this is something that we give typically every other year. This was in the fall of 2021, and they had 93,000 Kentucky students participate. The largest source of data, it's the largest source of data related to the youth using alcohol, tobaccos, and drugs. And they give it to 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. I put that on here because I think it's important that you look at your KIPP survey for your district and for your school so you can look at those measurements. And if you see low numbers in the social, emotional well-being, find out why. Why are these numbers so low or so high that there's a gap? What is happening? Are you seeing a lot more suicide ideation in your school? Sense of belonging is huge. We talked about this in my last session. When we feel a sense of belonging, our students will have a higher satisfaction with school. They have fewer behavior incidents, their academics are higher, and they have fewer mental health challenges. With that being said, I put this picture on here. We look at the connectiveness sense of belonging has when the school and the families are all connected together, because oftentimes the school is on the left and they're doing all this work with the kids in the middle. And sometimes our families and communities are not connected. And so therefore we're not getting a whole picture of sense of belonging for our students. But when the families and students in the schools are connected, we have healthier outcomes for our school. We see improvement in our youth development, our parents, they're more likely to have more open communication. And we want to be able to see that. Otherwise, we still see the high numbers of suicide ideation, alcohol use, and the low performances in academics. Again, this is more data, but I wanted to give you some qualitative tools. You can do data gallery walks. We'll talk about those. Shadow and student observations. If you have never done this, I challenge you to do this before school is out. But most important, the empathy interviews. And I'm going to show you an example of an empathy interview that was done at the high school that I was at. Our Earls did the data collecting, and they provided information for us, and it really did turn our school around. So data gallery walks are simply, and I'm gonna drop this presentation in the chat so you can watch the link. It's a video, and it talks about data equity walks. We do this with students, and we do it with families, and we do it with staff. We have what is called an equity dashboard in KDE. It'll provide you all the information that you need to look at for your students. When you look at attendance gaps, you're looking at academic gaps, looking at social emotional wellness and gaps in those. And you can print the data out. And what we do, you could do a simple needs assessment and get on a Google form too, if you want to do this, and put questions up and have the staff look at the numbers and tell you what they see. You can do the same thing with students. It's called a data gallery walk. And it's interesting, when I was in Paducah in March, we did this with the equity data, and the students saw that there was a huge gap with in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. The out-of-school suspensions were a lot of Black and brown students. In-school suspensions were a lot of Caucasian students. And the students wanted to know why there were more in-school versus out-of-school suspensions. And that was just from the students' perspective. So they put up a lot of reasons why they thought there would have been. And so I'm happy that they are looking at those gaps to figure out what could they do better when it comes to infractions. Street Data is one of the top books that we have read in the state, and my group, my team, and we've read Coaching for Equity, Conversations That Change Practice. If you click on this link when I send it to you, there's a video of my colleague Jamie Nabbit, and she's reading a blurb about Jabari's story in the Coaching for Equity. And they talk about Jabari, they having a teacher follow him around, and they're tracking his interactions. All day, he received constant negative interactions. Fix your coat, Jabari. Walk in line, Jabari. Pick your pants up, Jabari. Stop, watch your tone, Jabari. And only one teacher said something positive to Jabari. It was, good morning, Jabari. How are you? And so we have challenged districts to do this, whether you start and ride the bus and follow a student, just write down. And the tool is here. It's an interaction tool. You can click on it. It'll show you how you can track that. Just one student. And you'll be surprised the feedback that you get just observing. And this is another qualitative information that you can get. And then I would ask the student, how did you feel when your teachers were talking to you? Or how did you feel when you got on the bus and the bus driver was, short with you? Questions, and he probably is not the only student that's feeling that. So again, getting the voices behind the numbers is so important. But the empathy interviews, they really give you that one-on-one interview that uses open-ended questions. I was a counselor at Iroquois High School. It's in Jefferson County, and I arrived in December 2019. And there were a lot of behavior infractions. We had a whole administrative change. I came with a new administration team. And one of the things that I admired about the principal that we had and the Earls that we had a conversation as an admin team about how can we really get to the root of what's happening. We were all trying all these things as a counselor. Everything I was trying to, build relationships and, stop the fighting and just really trying to change what I thought was the issue. And I didn't take time. Well, we as an admin team didn't take time to really dig deep into what was happening. We had data. I could look at suspension data. I can look at attendance data. I saw the data, the numbers, but there was no voices behind the numbers. So we did an empathy interview. And under the empathy interviews, I click on this. And this is in Learning Forward. It's what we use to show as example. They give you a planning tool on how to conduct an empathy interview. KDE actually has guidelines on how to conduct empathy interviews as well. And they don't have to be 20 questions. Your empathy interview can consist of 3 simple questions, and you choose what those questions are. But you want to know why you're doing it, and this will help you create that, designing your questions, and how to prepare your team. So maybe this is something that you can do when students come back from spring break, if you want to spend that time now to then to do it, or something you want to do as an exit type interview with students. We did it specifically for everyone in the school, but in Freshman Academy, We really wanted to know what was going on because we had a new AP, we had counselors, we just had a lot of newness. And then when you come into a school, as you know, in the middle of the year, you're just trying to figure it out. And so this is the presentation I wanted to show you about the empathy interview. It pulls up. Yeah, see it? Can I get a thumbs up for someone if they can see this? Awesome. Okay, so we had 8 questions, and we also did, they also did staff empathy interviews as well. They just wanted to identify the needs of the students in the building. And one of the biggest things we learned about this empathy interview that the kids just wanted to be recognized. In the students' words, they felt like we were only paying attention to the bad kids. Students' words. How often do you think that we're always giving all our attention to students who are doing misbehavior, and we often forget about the kids who are showing up, who are on time, doing what they need to do? So it really made me think as a counselor, like, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much time on my tier 3 interventions and my tier 3 students. I really truly forgot about my tier 1 and tier 2. And I'm in the trenches, but you know how it is when we're in the trenches, you're just trying to fix it. And so often we are triaging and we forget that we have to think about the school collectively. So we'll go through this presentation quickly. One of the things we wanted to know, what are your plans and dreams after graduating from high school? We had at that time, very low graduation rate and very low college and career ready scores. And we really wanted to know what they planned to do. Most students said they wanted to attend college or they wanted to pursue something in the medical field. This really helped us as a way because we had pathways. So I don't know if any high school folks is on here, but we had our pathways and we wanted to make sure we were feeding our students into those right pathways. And one of the things I did as a freshman counselor was really allowing our freshman academy to go and really truly visit the pathways, not just, okay, let's do a quick visit, but really deep dive into what the pathways were doing, how this can align to what you want to do with your future. Because we had students that wanted to do cosmetology, but cosmetology is nowhere in the county that I was in. But we had early childhood and we try to show them that, okay, when you're in cosmetology school, you have to have people skills. You can learn how to do business. So we had a business magnet. If you want to own the business, just be, and not just work there, but own your business. But how do you show customer service? We can learn customer service by working with our early childhood students, how to be patient. So if you're going to be doing hair, you may have a 5-year-old hair that you need to do. How you treat a 5-year-old is very different how you treat someone who's 61. So having those conversations and getting them to see the big picture. And then we really talked about the impact of the change in their future when it comes to college and career. The second question is when, I can't even talk today, when were you recognized for doing something good and how did it make you feel? I took this a little deeper once meeting when we got this feedback. I went back to my freshmen because I wanted to know when was the last time, and I had several freshmen say, we haven't done anything to make us feel good, which broke my heart as a counselor because you wanted to know, well, what can I do to make you feel good? And sometimes it's the simple things. Is your teacher sitting at the door greeting you? Are we greeting our students? They come in the morning. Are we high-fiving? Are you elbow bumping? Are you doing something where you acknowledge our students? Do you know your students' names? Too often we forget that. I know in high school, you have 250 students you may see a day. It's a lot of names to keep up with. But those small things that you can do can really make students have a good vibe. As a kid said, I will get a good vibe. I'm a good kid. I stopped hanging with the wrong crowd. When they got questions corrected and made the students proud, when they had student of the month, different academies were doing different things. So we stopped doing it just academy, this academy doing it, this one not. We did it school-wide. Tickets to earn a party. So before we got there, the students again were not celebrated. So we decided to address tardies. We had so many students in the hallways. It was like the bell rang to be back in class and we still had several students in the hallways. A couple things we did. We created a playlist where the students can self-select music they want to hear at transition. The music would come on and they know all the latest songs, as long as it was clean. And they know that it will come on around 3 minutes. And they know I have 3 minutes. So when it gets to the end, they know I should be in class. We also gave them tickets for being in class, on time, no tardies. Now, the smallest thing we did, now we had to store it somewhere. At lunch, we gave them chips and candies and juice just for not having any tardies, because again, we needed them in class. When kids start seeing other kids getting praised and recognized, they're like, I want to do that too. Now, this is high school. Then they started getting in class on time. Then we had hall sweeps. We didn't have a lot of kids in our hallway, but we had to start somewhere. So I'm not always saying that food and candy is the best thing, but you have to start somewhere in your building. It may be something different with you, but that's kind of where we started. Think about the best teacher you've ever had in all your years attending high school, and why was he or she your favorite teacher? This is important because students need to have a sense of belonging and a connectiveness with someone in the building. It could be a teacher. We ask for a teacher, but it could be a custodian. It could be a bus driver. It could be someone that, it could be the social worker that comes into the building, the mental health practitioner. It could be the frisky. But it's important that the students identify someone in your building that they have a relationship with. Again, they should have a sense of belonging in your building. Overall things, we know relationships matter. Teachers take the time to sit down and talk to them, always willing to help. Teachers encourage them, and teachers that are enthusiastic about teaching. And let's just have a transparent conversation on the side about that. We have teachers in Kentucky that are coming to work at 9 o'clock and they're like, deuces, I'm leaving at 12, and they're not coming back. They're just walking out the job. Teachers are exhausted, and we are exhausted as educators. But we know as principals, we still have to run buildings. Even when we don't have teachers, even when subs don't show up and you asking teachers to cover, it's a lot. But one thing research has shown, that when we tap into our teachers' well-being, their social emotional learning, and giving them the resources they need to be healthy, they in turn turn around and have successful and healthy classrooms. The guest speaker this morning said, in order to change the culture, you have to change the climate, or something like that. I think I wrote it around the climate, the culture, something like that. Look at the climate that you have in your building. Is it changing the culture? Are your teachers happy? Now, we always know there are going to be some teachers that are not happy, but overall, are your teachers happy? And I'm glad that we did the empathy interviews with our teachers as well. Let's get past some of this and try to get to, this is important. What recommendations would you have to improve your experience at Iroquois High School? They talked about a lot about the fighting, stop the smoking. We need more security, more celebrations, improve student attitudes, hall passes back, and behavior is unfair. This right here changed the game because this came from students. We saw the suspension data and the fight data, but really, what are the students saying about it? The suspension data didn't tell me about people smoking. I mean, we knew it's a problem, but they go in depth. These are just highlights, but really listen to some of the key notes that we got back from them. Really helped us change what we were doing. I'm gonna flip to this. Staff talked about the positive environment. Mostly yes, but not everybody said yes. They do feel that there are days that is not a positive working environment. People are great, but the climate and culture do need to change, and most people really like their colleagues. This information really helped us look at what are we doing as an admin team to really ensure that our staff are feeling like they are in a positive environment, because that really dictates how they teach in their classroom, because overall it will wear on you. The vision statement, is it something that your staff know? Like, oftentimes we walk into schools and we see these vision and mission statements, and then I just will randomly ask the staff person, do you know your vision and mission statement? And if they don't know it, then we might need to go back and revisit it. Is it something really core? Is it just there just to be there? And they did change the vision and mission statement there. We talked about the professional learning. We talked about the leadership. We asked them questions. That was it. Resources. What do they need? Were things they feel everything was fair and equitable? I mean, we asked the staff tough questions, but we wanted to know what they wanted to hear. Now, the good thing about this, our Earls were the ones that did the interview, so they didn't feel like it was coming the principal where you had to put on a face and say, I need to say positive things, although I really want to say something else. And I will tell you that my team is actually going out to 2 different schools, and we're actually doing the empathy interviews for them, because the staff felt like the admin team would not be opening to listening to their feedback. So we have one coming up. So I'm super excited to support the school and their needs. Go back to this. I've dropped some additional resources on the teacher interaction tool and nurturing as a well-being. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just kind of have some conversations with you about empathy. one of the greatest tools of success I have seen in all of my years of education and as I travel the state is empathy. Principals that really have that to the core are some of the most successful principals I have seen. They actually really listen to their staff and their students and their families. And it's a lot to carry as a principal, but I encourage you to have a partner in this. And I don't know if you have cohorts or principal you can bounce ideas off of, but really think about how can you implement an empathy interview in what you're doing. It may not be this year. It may be something that, okay, we'll do this when they first come back, or we'll do it as an exit slip. But how can we get some qualitative data to dig deeper in what is happening in our buildings? So I'm curious, have you heard of empathy interviews before? Have you utilized them? Or you just really rely solely on your quantitative data? So I'm just kind of curious on what the principals are experiencing and how can we help support you and supporting your staff, your students, and your families and your communities.
Hi, I'm Tanya Rhodes. I'm an assistant principal at Mount Sterling Elementary School. I had not heard of empathy interviews before, but I was intrigued when I saw the session. I agree with you that empathy is a necessary tool to deal with kids as well as adults. I know here we're moving towards some things where we're trying to get to know our students better. We actually started minute meetings last year just to make sure that all of our kids felt like they were connected to an adult in the building. We've been working really hard on that. And then when we realized they didn't, we've been putting things in place to foster those relationships. We're a pretty small school. We're about 380. So it's a little easier for us to manage that, but we are having to be very intentional. We've actually picked up an additional round based on some of our MTSS data for some of our students, that we have check-ins with a lot of our students, just making sure that we are trying to build relationships. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm just gonna be completely honest. It's hard to get to know every kid in your building.
Yes.
And I think it's, especially on a personal level, I mean, I think we do a lot of surface level, but as far as really getting to know kids, I feel like at times we're firefighters and we're dealing with issues that come up. I mean, I'm just being completely honest. And there is that desire to get to know our kids and to be able to display that empathy with them. It's easy to see the kids who may be struggling.
Absolutely.
You know, I deal mostly with discipline. So, you know, I unfortunately do see a lot of the kids who get in trouble or who are, you know, have misbehaviors in the classroom. I will say that, you know, one of the things that we do here that I love is that restorative practice. You know, it's not always about what you've done or how you messed up, but how do we move forward? We're not going to harp on things. We're not going to remind you constantly of, you know, the mistake you made last, because we as adults make them all the time. And I know I personally don't want to be reminded every time I mess up when I go to do something else, but I love the idea of using, I'm going to say, an empathetic heart. I think we're missing that, and not just with kids, but with adults. And I know we can't understand everybody's walk or what everybody's been through, but we can try to understand where they're coming from. We're not going to know it exactly, but you know, to me, it means a lot for someone, for me personally, just to say, you know, I realize this is probably difficult for you. I can't understand that. I've never been through that, but I think just reaching out and trying to make those connections. But I love your presentation. I'm definitely going to look into the empathy interviews. I think that's fantastic.
And
so
again, you know, I would say this coming from the district when I got to KDE, I always thought when KDE came to the building, it was like, oh, we did something wrong, you know, and everybody was on edge. And then when I came to KDE, I was like, it's not bad. We're the good guys. I'm trying to help, you know, and so we have to deal with that a lot. So when we go into school and my team is there, they're like, oh, this was different. And I'm always like, there are resources and that we are here to help. So if you feel like you need help or are different lens, do not hesitate to reach out to the DEIB team. This is what we do. We want to make sure that we help support you. So if you don't have the capacity to do it, and even if it's like 2 questions, we can monitor that for you, or we can start it and you can finish it, something. Because again, it is really hard to build relationships with every student that we see, but every student has a story, every student has challenges. And so sometimes, one student's challenge really may be a lot of the underlying undercurrent of a lot of students we just didn't know. So the empathy interviews really help you pull that information out. Again, the quantitative data can't tell you, but kudos to you for having those connections and you utilizing your restorative practice. I'm a huge fan of restorative practices and the circles. And if it's really implemented with fidelity, it can really change the climate in your building.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed this very much.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Any other questions for Dr. Fields?
Just one of your opening slides showing the increase in suicide attempts. It's startling to see how high those have gone up just in the last couple of years. So yeah, definitely making those connections and making people feel valued and very important. And I had not heard of empathy interviews.
Okay.
Mm.
It is, I mean,
Thank you for sharing your PowerPoint presentation
You're
in
welcome.
the chat.
You're welcome. I think sometimes we think it's just us, like that we're the only school going through it. I'm the only principal going through this. Like, I've had a colleague of mine who's a principal of a middle and high school. And I remember last year they had 7 student deaths, 5 of them were suicides. And I remember her saying, like, it's only me. And I was like, it's not just you. I mean, everybody's feeling this. It's unfortunately that you've had this many, but it's not just you. And when we really started talking to students, they were just talking about just the pressure that they were feeling and like, how can we help with the pressure they were feeling? And I often say to my colleagues, when we don't know how we feel, to name a claim, something I did as a counselor is to teach my students and staff is that I feel some kind of way. And I started a group me with my teachers and they would just text, I feel some kind of way. And that will let me know that I need to go down and talk with them and, have conversations. And students will come to my office, Dr. Fields, I just feel some kind of way. Okay, well, let's talk through it. Let's process. And you will often realize it was frustration or if it was anxiety. They just don't always have the vocabulary to say that's what that is. But just always willingness to have that open door policy and truly have an open door policy where the staff, students, and community know they can come talk to you changes the game. And anytime I'm in schools and I'm completely a stranger in a lot of schools that I go to, I'm like, hey, can I help in the cafeteria? They're like, oh, okay. Because that's where the kids go. Everybody got to eat lunch. So I'm in there, I'm opening up juice boxes. We just went to Paducah and they have 3 elementaries, 1 middle, 1 high. And we were there for a breakfast for the preschool that they had. And I was opening up boxes and I fist bumped a little boy and my ring hit him. He said, oh, you hurt me. I said, I'm so sorry. I need a fist bump on my right hand. And he said, that makes me feel better because people that when I get hit and I hurt. I said, who's hitting you? We just had a random conversation from me fist bumping him with my ring and just talking to him and realizing some things were going on. But then other kids were talking about friends and how they talk to their teacher and how they let them know when their heart hurts. And so they kept saying, my heart hurts. Well, my heart hurts. I was like, this is the cutest thing. I'm gonna start telling people their heart hurts, their hearts are hurting. But that's the same vocabulary of I feel some kind of way. Their hearts are hurting. And I don't know if I have that picture. The one cool thing that I took away from that visit, the principal had a picture frame of a heart, and she had smaller hearts around the picture frame with every teacher's name on it. And if the teacher needed an extra love and hug, because not everybody wants to share what's happening, they put their name inside the heart. And if they saw the name inside the heart, they actually provided that teacher a little extra love. So she did tell me they had a teacher who was going through chemo. I think I have that picture. I'm gonna show it to you real quick. She was going through chemo and she was really kind of struggling. And because her name was inside the heart, those other teachers gave her extra love that day. And I thought, how amazing was that? And that came from her talking to the teachers and just really want to know what was going on. Now I'm in my basement, so excuse my basement, but I'm gonna just show you this. I think it's important. That's the heart. Can you see it? And it's 2 teachers' names inside the heart. And so the goal was to really give them some extra love. And I thought to myself, if we can do this with teachers, imagine teachers doing this with their students and saying, put your name in your heart if you need a little extra love that day. And so I'm gonna do it with my team. And when we get back, we've been back, but we won't see each other again until the 23rd, is put our names outside the heart and encourage folks in KDE and their agencies to do it as well. I mean, it's the small things that you can do. It didn't cost anything but $3 at the Dollar Tree for a frame and some hearts, and to give someone some extra love that day. I mean, you can do it with your students and say, if you had a whole wall of hearts, then you know that maybe I need to give that person some love. That's empathy. We give them that little things of just encouragement that they may need. So hopefully I said something today that you can take away and implement into your practices, or something that you can take with your admin team and say, hey, maybe we can look at this differently for next year. Because I know we're already gearing up for thinking about what's going to happen in August. But I'm here as a resource. My contact information is a slide. And I wish you nothing but blessings the rest of the school year.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Fields. We're going to stop recording now.
Thank
Let's see.
you.
Recording, stop.
All right. You're most welcome.